Melvin leisurely sat up, but this time his line of sight suddenly shifted towards the door of the infirmary. Carter almost jumped in fright. He hurriedly followed Melvin's line of sight over, and saw that half a person was standing by the infirmary door. Or, to be accurate, it was Gavin secretly standing behind the doorway with only half his head poking in, staring at the two of them unwaveringly. "Why are you here?" Carter's brows knit. "I'm here to look for you, Officer James," Gavin said gloomily. "Me?" Carter was taken aback. "What for?" Gavin's black eyes darted towards Melvin, obviously unwilling for him to be present. Carter checked the time and told Melvin, "You should go." Melvin got up and walked towards Gavin. Likely knowing it wasn't a good idea to mess with Melvin, Gavin kept shrinking his body behind the wall as Melvin approached him. "See you tomorrow, Officer James." Melvin turned his head back, saying this one sentence to Carter before he left. Carter was able to regain his normal composure, looking towards Gavin, half hidden behind the doorway. "What are you looking for me for?" Gavin still had the same gloomy look on his face. He asked, "Officer James, do you do stocks?" "Stocks?" Carter was even more taken aback now. "No." "Liar," Gavin mumbled softly, his gaze drooping downwards. Confusion filled Carter's mind like fog. He walked towards Gavin, tempering himself to say, "What on earth are you looking for me for?" While they weren't considered close, they could at least communicate with each other normally. But little did Carter expect that once he neared, Gavin would actually retreat, seemingly dead set on keeping a distance between them. "Don't come over," Gavin said. "I can't get too close to you." The corners of Carter's lips twitched. Any ideas of communicating with Gavin completely evaporated. He often couldn't make sense of what this stinky brat was thinking in any case, nor did he understand how Luke resolved the generation gap between them. Forget it then. Carter left the infirmary and returned to the library, while Gavin followed furtively behind him. Carter just pretended that Gavin didn't exist, going on with whatever business he had at hand. After a long time, Gavin appeared to be unable to hold back any longer, hesitantly walking up to the entrance of his work area. "Officer James, I've something important to tell you." Gavin made to come into the work area as he spoke. Carter immediately called hold of him. "Get out." Carter lifted his chin. "Whatever it is, you can say it from out there." "Doesn't Melvin always go in?" Gavin's lips curled. "He is him, and you are you," Carter mercilessly said. "I ask this one last time. What is it?" Gavin breathed in deeply, sprawling over the office desk, one hand blocking the side of his mouth. He whispered to Carter, "Officer James, I know your secret." "Secret?" Carter's brows furrowed at this, instinctively assuming that Gavin had found out about the pinhole camera in the recreation room. But on second thought, Gavin didn't even go to the recreation room in the first place. How then would he know what other inmates didn't? "What secret?" Carter said without a flicker in his expression. "I snooped around admin the past 2 days, observing all of the prison officers." Gavin's voice became smaller and smaller as he went on. "And so," Carter asked, "you're the god of Go, right, Officer James?" Gavin's eyes were sparkling with excitement. "I've finally found you, idol." Seriously, he had no clue how he had become the god of Go. "I checked the God of Go's IP address from the stock trading forum and it ended up leading to Southside Prison." Gavin touched the bridge of his nose with his index finger, nudging up his completely non-existent glasses. "Then I looked into who in prison had computer access and found that they were all prison staff in civilian posts. The patrol team could be eliminated from those with computer access, restricting his search to the admin block. But this wasn't the main point." Carter quickly captured a key piece of information from Gavin's words. The God of Go was in Southside Prison. As Gavin recounted his deduction process, Carter couldn't help but lose himself in thought as well. From Gavin's words, the God of Go was a great stock trading god, who abruptly vanished into thin air over a month ago and appeared again later, except his IP address now was different from before, and quickly after vanished again. Therefore, after going on a whole ramble of how he deduced this, Gavin finally paused to breathe, and he continued. I went back to where I first started and checked the God of Go's previous IP address. And I found out that it wasn't far from Southside Prison, located in a residential community just a few kilometers away. And guess who lives there? Gavin suppressed his excitement and said, It's you, Officer James. Carter wasn't the only one who lived in that community and was also present in Southside Prison. Unlike Gavin's exuberance, Carter remained calm, checking the desk calendar by his hand. He asked Gavin, which date did the God of Go last appear? Gavin gave it a thought, then reported a date from last week and claimed that it was impossible for him to misremember it. Everything aligned. Carter had changed the password on the very day that Melvin had touched his computer. He couldn't think up any complicated yet easy-to-remember password on the spot, so he used the calendar on his desk for inspiration. The password he came up with was comprised of information such as the present date at that time, such that even if he forgot it later on, he could jog his memory just by glancing at the calendar on his desk. And the date that Gavin reported was precisely the date that he had circled in red on his desk calendar. Just then, Carter's walkie-talkie suddenly crackled to life. The warden's secretary was requesting that he drop by the warden's office. After the prison guard took Gavin away, he got distracted looking at the bandages on his hand for a while before collecting his thoughts and taking it off, going up to the warden's office on the 3rd floor. When his walkie-talkie crackled to life just now, Carter already had an inkling of what the warden was looking for him for. As expected, after he reached, it was regarding how Melvin should be rewarded for helping a prison officer out of trouble. Officer James, you were an involved party. What do you think? The warden asked. From an impartial point of view, Carter felt that the reward shouldn't be excessive as the situation just now wasn't critical. He could have controlled the scene even if Melvin had not appeared. But from a personal point of view, Carter felt that Melvin had done a great service by thrashing that rapist. Give him performance points, Carter proposed. Naturally, he's failing now, the warden said. The question is how many points we should award him. With the way that Melvin persistently got into fights, he was left with only 20 or so performance points. In such a situation, he couldn't receive early parole, even when close to his release from prison. Carter deliberated for a moment, then opened his mouth. Warden, the situation just now was extremely critical. If it weren't for Melvin rushing over in time, I'm afraid I understand. The warden nodded. Although we can't reduce his sentence, we must make sure that he is accordingly rewarded. How about clearing his previous negative performance record then? Carter tentatively said, and give him full points for performance. Carter was very clear that these rewards had exceeded what Melvin should be getting, nor was he expecting the warden to agree on the spot. He was only trying to set the bar high first so that there would be room for negotiation after. Little did he expect that the warden would nod pensively, agreeing. Splendid. I feel that this reward is very suitable. Carter calmly raised his eyebrows. He was willing to wager that the warden had already intended to reward Melvin handsomely, and had only come looking for him to round up the act. He said meaningfully, Warden, your stocks have been doing well lately, haven't they? Pretty decent, the warden said. My wife no longer objects to my stock trading at last. Having personal guidance on how to trade from an acclaimed great god on the stock trading forum was not treatment that just anyone could enjoy. Speaking of this, I think that the rewards still aren't enough yet. The warden continued, the stock market closes at 3, but Melvin's free time is only until 2:30. I think that we can extend this time by half an hour. Suddenly reminded, Carter asked, Who's reading for Melvin now? Isn't it still you? The warden said, Melvin told me that you were having a sore throat and needed to rest for 2 days. I think you look all better already. So this was it. Which also meant that Melvin had only planned to give him 2 days to rest and smooth his ruffled feathers, but would come back still when it was time. In light of this, Carter said, then I don't think it's necessary to give him another half hour. He used to be free after 2 in the afternoon. As long as nothing else cropped up, the remaining 3 hours of the day was his to kick back and relax. Now, with Melvin hogging so much of time, he naturally didn't want to give him half an hour more. However, the warden acted as if he hadn't heard him, saying heedlessly to the secretary, "Okay, that's settled. Go make the arrangements." Warden. "Officer James," the warden raised a hand, cutting into Carter. "Your job is relatively idle. Since you have so much time, it won't hurt to learn stock trading, no?" Hearing this, Carter quietened. He used not to have any interest in stock trading, because he was not short on money. But he suddenly changed his mind at the mention of this. After all, he had just discovered something amusing. As it turned out, Melvin had a little secret too. After work today, Carter spent the night surfing the stock trading forum. Go had a lot of followers on this forum. Carter finally understood why Gavin would worship his idol so ardently, because Go was indeed a figure with a pre-installed heroic halo. Carter read through Go's old posts one by one. Most of them merely comprised of several sentences bringing up bullish or bearish stocks, but he would also expose problematic listed companies on occasion, advising retail investors to avoid the landmine. Every time he named a company, there would always be people replying in jest for him to watch out for his personal safety, as his words held too much weight and would deal a significant blow to companies. It was also for this reason that conspiracy theories flooded the forum after Go's disappearance. Some claimed that the god of Go was being imprisoned by black-hearted companies, and some claimed that the god of Go was being investigated by the regulatory board. In short, everyone was pessimistic. It was no wonder that kid Gavin would get so worried. Carter used to think that Gavin was making a mountain out of a molehill and didn't take it seriously at all. But after browsing around the forum now, he then found that there were actually so many people concerned for Go's well-being. He was the only one who knew this secret. He had to admit that this made him feel pleased. Carter continued to excavate Go's old posts, and he found an interesting tidbit. Go would often make typos, so many fans had advised God of Go to be more careful and make fewer typos. Only Carter knew that their God of Go was dyslexic. What he typed on the forum was very possibly written using a voice-to-text converter. At this, the corners of Carter's lips quirked up. This guy, Melvin, was actually a bit cute. Carter read until midnight, by which time his eyes had already started to go sore and swell, before finally turning off the computer with great reluctance. Lying in bed, he recalled the visual of Melvin boxing. He once thought that this man would be very cold and ruthless, but little did he expect that this guy was actually hiding such a sense of justice on the inside. If someone got Carter to analyze Melvin the way he did others, in truth, he would be unable to. The only thing he could say was that Melvin was very, very, very much the most interesting person he had ever met. Having stayed up late reading the forum the previous night, Carter almost overslept the next morning. After speedily freshening up, he took out that dubious, unbranded and unlicensed product from the freezer, rapidly smearing some jam on a piece of bread, holding his breakfast in his mouth as he hurried out of the door. Carter finally found an interval while waiting for the first traffic light on the way to work to finish his breakfast. He didn't feel that this twice-processed strawberry jam was to his taste at first, but over time he grew used to it, conversely growing to like it even more than those factory-made strawberry jams. After polishing off the bread, Carter lifted his chin and glanced at the rearview mirror. Sure enough, a bit of jam had gotten onto the corners of his lips. He first licked off the jam with his tongue, but before he could wipe his mouth again with a tissue, the red light jumped to green. He hurriedly stepped on the gas pedal, managing to rush to Southside Prison before 8 o'clock. There was less mail to deliver today. Carter hastened his walking pace. Usually he would chat a bit with a few inmates about the contents of their letters, but today he was like an emotionless mail delivery machine, getting this job done in the quickest possible time. At 8:50, Carter hurriedly returned to the library before Melvin's arrival and found a book from the bookshelves called Learning to Trade Stocks from Ground Zero. Then he pretended to read it in his work area. When Melvin came to the library and sat in the work area, he looked at Carter with quite some surprise indeed. "Officer James, you want to learn stock trading?" In a good mood, Carter hummed lightly. "Didn't you have no interest before?" Melvin asked. I changed my mind. Carter closed the book and looked at Melvin. Are you going to teach me? Melvin didn't immediately respond. He looked first at the book, then at Carter, obviously finding it weird. Carter didn't actually want to learn stock trading. He only wanted to see Melvin in over his head for once. In spite of Melvin's careful calculations, he surely would never have guessed that Carter already knew his little secret. You don't have to read books to learn stock trading. Melvin slowly opened his mouth to speak, observing Carter's expression. Accumulating experience is more important. If I don't read books, then what should I be looking at? Carter touched his chin and thought for a beat. I got it. I'll go look at forums. After saying this, he heedlessly clicked on the web browser to open the stock trading forum he had spent the night surfing. I heard that this forum is more authoritative. Have you heard of it? Carter asked. Now Melvin's vigilance instantly rose, and he soundlessly scrutinized Carter's actions. Carter's expression was as immovable as Mount Tai, with nary anything clouding his eyes, aglow with a pure, inquisitive look. He finally understood why Melvin liked teasing him so much. He only discovered now how fun it was to tease someone. I have, Melvin said without any change in his expression. Many retail investors have gathered on this forum. Do you frequently come on here? Carter kept with his questions. Melvin continued measuring Carter, returning, What do you think? Carter was deeply familiar with Melvin's style. The moment that he started answering with a question, it meant that he had drawn his defenses up. You probably do. Carter smothered the amusement in his heart, replying with a straight face. I heard that there are a lot of specialists on this forum. Where did you hear it from? Melvin abruptly asked. You said that this forum is more authoritative. Who told you this? Following Melvin's way of doing things, he definitely wouldn't passively take a pummeling. I casually looked it up online, Carter said calmly. Is this forum not authoritative? Carter flung the question back at him. However, he still underestimated Melvin's level of vigilance. Melvin didn't continue to answer his questions, nor did he probe him with questions in return. Instead, he looked straight at Carter and said, Officer James, you're acting weird today. Am I? Carter blinked innocuously. Why do you suddenly want to learn how to trade stocks? Melvin asked. The warden told me that it wouldn't hurt for me to pick it up in my free time. Carter had prepared his answers in advance, knowing that the teasing had to be done in moderation, especially when he was up against an old fox like Melvin. The slightest moment of inattention would expose his feet of clay, thus he didn't go too deep into it, saying carelessly, So are you going to teach me or not? I am, Melvin said. If you want to learn, why wouldn't I teach you? With his objective accomplished, the corners of Carter's lips subtly lifted. He needed a legitimate reason to bring up stock trading in the future to create opportunities to tease Melvin. As long as Melvin remained in the dark about what this was about, then he could recoup his losses from being teased in the past. Officer James, Melvin's voice cut into the mirth hanging off his lips. Did you eat strawberry jam today? Carter returned to the present, looking at Melvin. I eat it every day. Is it the jar that I gave you? I didn't buy a new one. Not wanting Melvin to think that he had some kind of attachment to it, Carter added, It would be a waste otherwise. The moment his voice fell, Melvin suddenly reached over to him from the side, cupping Carter's face, wiping the corner of his lips with a thumb. How did it end up over here? Imperceptible doting was laced in his tone as he said this, which, coming right after Carter deliberately made mischief, involuntarily caused his back to prickle numbly. Is there? Carter self-consciously wiped the corner of his lips with the back of his hand. He swore that he had licked off the jam from the corners of his mouth, but perhaps due to him not taking a tissue to wipe it, he could have missed some. The amount that he missed definitely wasn't much, or someone would surely have noticed before now. With the close proximity at which Melvin was sitting, if there was really something on Carter's face, it naturally wouldn't escape his notice. How did you process it? Melvin asked. I'll do the same next time. I added some fresh lemon juice, Carter said. The sweetness would be too cloying otherwise. When saying this, Carter completely overlooked something, which was that Melvin wanted to continue making it for him in the future. Is that so? Melvin dropped his gaze in thought for a split second, then abruptly sucked on the thumb that had just touched the corner of Carter's lips. His lower jaw moved, as though his tongue was running over his thumb, like he was reluctant to waste any hint of flavor on it. A moment later he set his hand down and looked at Carter. I can't taste it. Wasn't that only natural? Carter hastily averted his dazed look, refusing to expose the racy filth that had floated up in his mind again. However, at this time, he found that Melvin had a strange look in his eyes. He was gazing fixedly at his lips. What are you looking at? Carter subtly leaned towards the windows. It just occurred to me. There isn't a next time. I'll buy it myself from the supermarket. What's the point? Melvin finally lifted his gaze from Carter's lips. I can make it for you.